Now, from religious leaders who take on political roles to political leaders who take on religious roles, the daily influence of faith on political values and policy making, extremists also trying to consolidate power in certain regions. The relationship between politics and religion has evolved over the years and continues to do so.
Now, while some have held on to the school of thought that faith and state should not be kept separate or should be kept separate, others find that this might not be practicable in today's world and rather would ensure that a healthy balance is achieved to avoid exploitation and the abuse of the power dynamics. Until the second half of the 20th century, the role of religion in Africa was profoundly neglected. But according to a recent Gallup poll, Africa is host to the highest number of religious countries in the world. But whether religion plays a role in Africa's development prospects by any measure or standard is nevertheless part of an ongoing conversation across the continent. Now, joining us this morning to delve further into the conversation is Adenike Oyetunde-Lawal, a lawyer, media practitioner, and the current senior special advisor to the Lagos State Government on persons living with disability. Good morning, Adenike. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
Now, Adenike, you have always used your platform to speak about social injustice, politics, and faith. What are your thoughts on the relationship between religion and politics in Africa?
Okay, listening to you reel out the numbers, without a doubt, it has become evident that the relationship between religion and the church has always been, at least up until the 18th century across the world and 20th century in Africa. So it is intertwined, however, yet distinct in their operations, in their ideologies, and in execution, as the case is. So that's where I stand. Related, however, distinct.
Related, but however distinct.
Pretty interesting. Now, I want us to quickly, take a look at this clip, that went viral, over the weekend, and then we'll get you to quickly respond to it. It's a clip of, persons wanting to attend church service being told that they may have to go back. Let's have you watch it.
From today, if you are coming for mass, carry your PVC. If you don't have your PVC, don't bother coming. Because there is no point having Christians fill the church. But during election, we have only a handful of them go out to vote. So it means our number, our population means nothing. So we want Christians to take their responsibility and their role seriously. So today I am serious about it as I'm standing here.
Well, and that, of course, created loads of conversations all through yesterday across, social media. Adenike, let's quickly have you respond to that. Do you agree with, a perspective like that?
Okay, so to be honest, I'll say very simply that I do agree with him, and I'll explain to you why. What does religion do? Religion teaches us to adhere to what laws exist in societies where we are present. And what the government does is to enforce the written laws. That is why when I started my opening remarks, I mentioned how closely related religion and government or politics is, however distinct. So I understand again that if you look at the Nigerian numbers in the last 3 or 4 election cycles, you would agree with me that we have gotten the most votes from a different part of the country where we believe very strongly that quite a number of them belong to a particular religious belief. So if we are looking aggressively at participation, which has been the biggest and loudest conversation we have been having in the last 3 or 4 election cycles in Nigeria, I believe very strongly that as an agent of socialization, family unit, parents, caregivers, the mass media, and now religion must stand up to play her role in encouraging participation in governance and politics. So in light of all of the above that I have said, I believe very strongly that yes, what he should do is to admonish his parishioners to go out and get their permanent voter cards, but I do not think that they should be denied access to the place of worship, especially on the day of worship.
Okay, now you've talked about, how religion can help, push in this scenario, the priest admonishing his church members or his parishioners to go out and get their PVCs. Let's talk about the other ways in which religious orientations shape public support for democracy.
Okay, so if you would agree with me, I'm a person who loves what they call autobiographies. I love real life stories. And There's certain things that cut across as similarities between religious belief and religion. Religious beliefs and politics, I beg your pardon, it is the cultic following. There is a tendency to have a following such that where boundaries are not understood or clearly defined, there becomes problems. So people who advocate that, government and politics and the church or the mosque be separated usually opine that it's primarily because of suppression of thoughts. You believe that these people who no longer can think on their own, whatever it is their leaders say becomes law. There's also the issue of hypocrisy. There's also the issue of dogma and also the issue of fear. So because of all these above things and many others, with research that back all of these things that I'm saying, it's easier for people to talk about the intersectionality as well as the difference that exists between these two institutions because they are institutions. I do not see a lot of Muslims or talk about the difference between government and politics and then Islam. I find out that the conversation usually surrounds Christianity, and I'm not sure it's because Christianity is more lenient to several things. So it's a very interesting discourse that that video has spurred. But the reality is, if we are talking about the strongest and loudest conversation we've been having in the last 3 or 4 cycles, it has been about increased participation. And so whatever means we can within the legal powers that we're empowered to, we must advocate for increased participation. I see churches invite the electoral body to come to their services, come to their churches during days where they do not have service to register their members. It is just to encourage participation. But again, I do not subscribe to denying these parishioners access on the days of worship. Yes, you can encourage them by telling them to go to these places if you're able enough to put resources together to bring those people together, or 3 or 4 churches come together, then it works.
Well, I also want us to, maybe also go and look at some of the parts where it may not be, very, very much of a good thing, because we also see that when it's time for elections, a lot of people take advantage of religious bodies. They go to the churches, go to the mosque. They also have religious colorations to a lot of their conversations to divide people, and make people then vote based on religion or stuff like that. There's always things like this with regards to politics. So is there ways that that the church, the mosque, religious bodies can get involved, but they cannot be taken advantage of? And at the same time, is there ways that we can maximize the relationship for good, but not for, not necessarily abuse it?
So this is a very, very necessary part to this conversation, because again, we see it every time it's election season. You see the candidates visit churches and mosques and just, for solidarity. But I believe very strongly, in my opinion, that accountability is one tool that we are not using. The church and the mosque have the numbers that these people need to win elections. And because they know how powerful these two institutions are, because in 2 different religious beliefs, I believe very strongly it is time for them to find a way to put a structure around accountability. If you come to us and you tell us that these are the things that you want to do, if you are a member of our belief society and you say we should vote for you, we should be able to ask you, what are the things you intend to do for us? How do you intend to do these things? What are the things that you're promising that if elected, your government will do? In the event that in a year or 2 after election, you do not do any of those things, you should be barred from stepping your foot into those places, because time had been given to you to put into action all that you had railed out, prior to your being elected into whatever position it is. So the tool that must be used is accountability. We must hold them to account. Every single thing that it is that they say, we must hold them to account. We watch now midterm elections in the US, for instance, how people are digging up what these candidates had said years ago because they're holding them to account. It hasn't been smooth. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the US has it all well. They do not have it all well. And to be honest, I don't think they are the best of examples for us as a people and as, as a method of democracy. But again, if we do not hold these people accountable, it just becomes wishy-washy. You can't come 2 years from now and say you want to build a structure. You can't come 2 years from now and say you want to build a new mosque or you want to build, a school. We must again be content. Contentment is one thing that has killed us, and I can't fault a lot of people because there's poverty in the land. So if you're looking to expanding your cathedral, for instance, and somebody who came 3 years ago is now back to say, oh, you know what, I will do this and that. You don't ask any questions. Why are we collecting tithe for them? I'm Christian. Why are we receiving their tithe? We're receiving your tithe, it means that we're encouraging you. We're saying, oh, yes, even though we know we are not doing the things that you promise you should do, and don't worry, bring your money, we'll need your money. It is wrong, and it is wrong. And these are conversations that our religious leaders must sit down together, pull their resources, every single part of it, and ask themselves, how do they ensure that this cycle does not continue? Because when it continues, again, like you mentioned, religious coloration becomes what these candidates do, and it's a walk in the park for them.
Absolutely. I mean, as we get towards 2023 elections, we will certainly have more of these conversations. I look forward to having you join us. Thank you very much, Adenike Oyetunde-Lawal, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and happy Democracy Day.
Happy Democracy Day too. Bye.
Bye.